Hey everybody, in this video we're going to talk about improvising. So this is really aimed at people who are at an intermediate guitar level. So some knowledge is assumed in terms of knowing the basic scales. So knowing the pentatonic scale, for example, and the major scale. And if you don't know those, I have a course called 10 Scales and Modes You Must Know that's available on my website. Just go to joerobinson.com/courses. But for those of you who do know the basic scales, I have a series of ideas that I think will really help you in practicing improvising, because improvising, like anything else, is something that, we need to practice to get comfortable with. It can be overwhelming to think about how to do this because some people really advocate for doing a lot of transcribing of solos, and I think that's helpful to a point. I love just practicing playing solos a lot. So I'll work with a backing track often, and there are plenty of backing tracks online. You can just Google up a particular scale or chord and find a backing track for it, even on YouTube here. Or you can make your own. Sometimes I'll make backing tracks just with voice memos on my phone and I'll play along with myself. But here are some ideas that I think will really help you to have a more effective practice session when working on improvising. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of my weekly videos. So this is a really cool way to practice a scale. Let's say we're practicing the blues scale, which sounds like this. Let's practice taking one note out. So let's practice the scale without the fifth. That's a pretty cool sound. Now if we practice improvising with it, we can get sounds like this. So all I'm doing is practicing the blues scale with one note taken out. So you can take any scale and take any note out and find cool sounds and cool phrases. So that's a really cool technique. I learned that from Wayne Krantz, listening to Wayne Krantz talk about improvising. I think he's a really brilliant improviser, one of my favorites for sure. So we can practice playing one string at a time. Now if we're in the key of C major, that would sound something like this on the B string. We can practice playing on two strings at a time, any two strings. So let's say we'll play the A string and the G string, still in C major. Something like that. So that's a cool idea. We can use double stops, which is just playing two notes together. And I highly recommend learning scales in double stops. It's a great way to get used to playing more melodic lines when you're soloing, I think. So we'll take the key of G major and we'll play double stops in thirds like this. That's a really beautiful sound. We can practice our dynamics. Now I think dynamics are somewhat underrated these days in our approach to the guitar, but if we take the C minor pentatonic scale, for example, and we play really softly, and then loudly, softly, and loudly. can work on our vibrato. So vibrato is such a beautifully expressive technique. So you can just take one note and practice pulling all the beauty out of it that you can. We can move through that same scale, C minor pentatonic. We can practice with our eyes closed. You know, it's a good thing to be able to do because we don't want to get so used to looking at the fretboard all the time. I like to practice in front of a mirror for that same reason, just getting used to looking forward rather than looking down all the time. So playing with our eyes closed can just help us really pay attention to the sound and to not pay attention to the frets as much, maybe. So if we play in E major with our eyes closed, it might sound something like this. We can practice playing funky, so with some kind of syncopated rhythms and just a bit of a harder attack, maybe something like this. That's good fun. We can practice playing gracefully, so really just trying to be like a beautifully played piano, like a violin or something. We can practice playing as few notes as possible. So let's say I'll create a groove in G minor and I'll play the G minor Dorian mode and try to play as few notes as possible while still feeling the groove. You're probably thinking I could have played fewer notes than that, but you know, that's the way I like to practice that, is just trying to play like melodically while still keeping the groove going within the phrases, but just not playing all the kind of go-to faster licks. That's usually in our trick bag. The idea is just to slow things down a little and try to play as few notes as possible. And sometimes when I'm doing this, I'll just use the thumb. I find that slows me down in a good way sometimes. So can I get this sound? quite a few notes in there, but you get the point. A great thing to do is to listen back to a recording of yourself playing solos to evaluate it, but not necessarily to get super picky about everything you're doing, but just to listen to the feeling and the groove and the tone and the dynamics and your touch. Because, as important as ear training is, and there's a lot of emphasis on that these days, people encouraging you to learn intervals and get comfortable with chords. I think that's really great training to have, but I think the most important ear training is just to really listen to the way you sound, to the tone you're pulling out of the instrument. Because at the end of the day, what makes a musician masterful in my mind is just how they pull all the music out of their instrument. It can be a drum. You can pull so much tone out of a drum. You listen to Steve Gadd or Tony Williams or Vinnie Colaiuta or any of these great drummers play a tom, and it just has so much musicality, and then I'll hit it and I'll be like, why doesn't it sound like them? Well, there's a touch. And it's like I'm in the studio with a bass player like Glenn Wolfe, and he just touches the strings and it sounds like a hit record. And it's because he's spent so many years playing bass for people like Mark Knopfler. He's just one with that instrument. And I feel the same way with the guitar. I'm always refining my touch and my tone, and I'm doing that with my ear by really listening. I asked Tommy Emmanuel, I said, what do you think about when you are playing? What goes through your mind? And he said, I'm just listening to the sound. I'm just listening for the tone, really trying to get a good tone. So I think that's one of the most important things to develop with our ear, is to bridge that gap between what we think we sound like and what we really do. Because as we get, that gap bridged, we become more connected to our instrument, and we become more capable of kind of switching off the mind and just playing with real expression. And that's what improvising really is about. I said earlier that it is great to be able to transcribe solos, and a lot of emphasis is put on that kind of from people with a jazz background. But I personally, don't really enjoy that very much. I guess my ear is not as great as it could be. I really haven't done much transcribing at all. I prefer playing along to songs, playing along to backing tracks, figuring out how to improvise, how to play the sounds in my head. I love learning great melodic solos and songs by people like Eric Johnson and Carlos Santana. I learned a lot of those when I was a teenager, and they helped me develop my vocabulary. But I think transcribing can get you to a point. There comes a point where you just have to dive in and try playing your own solos, and everybody sounds bad when they begin. And it's just a case of working on your scales and working on your lines, refining your ear, and just getting more and more comfortable playing over a variety of chord changes. So when you're practicing, I really encourage you to put aside some time for working on your improvising, and make a list of all these things that I've suggested practicing. Omitting one or two notes from your scale, practicing one string at a time, practicing two strings at a time, practicing double stops, working on dynamics, playing really soft and loud and going between, working on your vibrato, closing your eyes when you play, playing funky, playing gracefully, playing as few notes as possible, playing with the thumb can be a great way to do that. Listening back to a recording of you playing some solos, that's enough to keep me busy for a few hours at least. Like I said, the best ear training is just really listening to the way you sound and trying to bring a beautiful tone and a beautiful finesse out of your instrument in every phrase. So if you've made it this far in the video, leave a comment that says, listen. Listen. If you're interested in learning more about my approach to the instrument, I have a few courses available. I have a course called Joe's 12, which is a 12-week course, and that features a kind of really big picture view at the instrument. And I interviewed a lot of my mentors in that course, including people like Eric Johnson, Steve Vai, Robin Ford, Tommy Emmanuel, John Jorgensen, a lot of great people. The links to all my courses can be found on my website, joerobinson.com/courses. I have a number of courses with TrueFire that are all listed at that same link, including 10 scales and modes you must know. And there's another course called Guitar Synergy, which is a channel It's an archive with hundreds and hundreds of videos where I teach you how to play great songs. There's backing tracks. There's also an open mic section where you can post a video of you improvising or playing a song, and I'll comment on it, and a lot of people from the channel will chime in and encourage you and offer suggestions if you'd like it. So check out the Guitar Synergy channel, and I also have a number of fingerstyle courses available with Udemy called Complete Fingerstyle Guitar. And like I said, the links to all those courses can be found on my website, joerobinson.com/courses. I hope this video has been really helpful to you. Please like and subscribe this video, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss any of the weekly lessons and songs, all kinds of stuff.